we're getting ready to flip it for our company. I'm going to tell you a few things about flipping that the TV shows don't usually tell you. And this one in particular, someone attempted to flip it and found out it was a lot more than they thought it was going to be. So we scooped in, we're going to take it over and do it the right way. When you're flipping, think about staying in the footprint of the house. Stay within the footers. We had to rearrange a lot of stuff in this house to make it functional for today. The house was built back in the 20s, so it wasn't built for our modern lifestyles. A bathroom really needs to be 5 by 8 minimum, and that's because a standard tub is 60 inches. If you go smaller or bigger, you're left with the dilemma of buying a custom tub or framing in weird alcove walls. By making the choice to keep our bathroom here but expand the footprint, I've got a hallway behind me that has to be a certain size. We've got a doorway in front of me. The door now opens the wrong direction and blocks the entrance into the house. So we have to put a new front door on in order to accommodate this new space that we chose in our layout. Old houses had different rules when they built them, if they had any rules at all. This house is so old. The ceilings are actually framed on 24-inch centers. Modern houses are framed on 16-inch centers. So with a 16-inch center, you can use half-inch drywall. This flipper did not account for the fact that you're going to have to use 5/8 inch drywall, which is thicker, costs more to install, costs more to buy. All right, so like I said before, we took over this house from somebody else. You can see there's insulation poorly done in one little section. We're going to tear all that out and do it the correct way. In the age of this home, they did not actually insulate the walls. They didn't insulate the floors. At some point, somebody insulated the ceiling, but it wasn't originally that way. So we're going to have to account for insulating the entire space, ceiling, walls, and floors up to modern code. So once again, insulation. We've got to consider insulation in our building code. This roof is framed in a 2x4, which I can't do legally anymore. If you don't touch it, you don't have to fix it, but it's open, so we have to fix it. It's not enough framing member for me to spray foam, so we could attach wood to the bottom, spray foam it, but then my ceiling height's even lower. And I can't count anything below 7 feet in my living square footage space. When this house was built with the balloon framing, they weren't required to put headers above the windows. Now the header distributes the load, which is the roof above us, to load points that go down to the footers so it doesn't crack your window. This flipper didn't know anything about framing and decided to just put a 2x4 in there in order to nail his window to. Now, it's probably not going to be a problem because it hasn't been a problem for the past however many years this house has been standing. But when you go through framing inspection, they're going to fail you over this, so you got to put in a real structural member up there. So what we're going to do to fix this problem is remove what they did, obviously, and then we're going to take two 2x8s and sandwich them together with a piece of plywood. You nail them together, you glue them together, and you put that structural member up there, and that'll allow us to distribute the load properly. So when you're flipping or even remodeling an old house, most of the time you want to keep all the cool old elements that are part of that house that kind of distinguish it from modernism. This is a super cool door. We planned on following lead protocol. You don't want to breathe in lead dust when you're sanding this, so just follow lead protocol if you're going to do this. We wanted to sand it, refinish it, keep it, but upon further research, we can't get these keys anymore, so I can't duplicate the lock. So we're going to be forced to eliminate this door and put in a new door. We're going to talk about framing again. There's this weird little alcove thing here. I don't know what the last guy had in mind for it, but it's pretty much useless space. So what we want to do is take the roof off. We're going to frame it up higher. In a living situation for square footage, you have to have a 7-foot head height for your ceiling. So we're going to bring this up to a legal head height and get to count this as square footage for the living space. Once again, this is what happens when you hang 1/2-inch drywall on 24-inch centers. It's too heavy, it can't support itself. It's going to cause a problem for the future homeowners. They're going to get cracks, they're going to get dropping drywall. So you got to hang 5/8 inch drywall. Something else in a home of this age is there's no moisture barrier between the siding and the walls. So you're left with a couple options. What we're going to do is we're going to house wrap this exterior siding and cover it with vinyl. So here's a great example of the balloon framing issue and updating to modern building codes. I can stick my hand underneath the house right here. If we get a fire upstairs and they go through the drywall, that air gap is going to cause that fire to go in both directions, up into the roof and down under the house, and that fire is going to spread a lot faster. So we've got to block all these air gaps so we can stop that fire. So we talked about the balloon framing in this house and the way it used to be okay, but now it's not okay. The balloon framing creates air. Air pushes fire. So there's these big gaps in the wall where the fire can travel between floors and spread way more rapid. What we're going to do is seal all those gaps with a product called fire foam. You spray it in, it expands, it's completely non-flammable, and it meets modern building code. When they built this house, the subfloor was the finished floor. Today we have a subfloor and then a finished floor. It gives it more thickness, gives it more rigidity. This floor kind of moves on us. So what we're going to do is go over this floor with an additional 3/4 inch floor. Then we're going to overlay that with our LVP planks. So I want to talk about a big scary topic to people, and that's asbestos. So this is called asbestos siding. It's not scary, it's just got to be treated the proper way, and there are professionals that can do that for you. We are raising this roof, which is going to affect this siding. There's two ways to deal with asbestos: either encase it or remove it. If you're doing either, you should have a proper assessment by an expert. So if you encounter asbestos or you're not sure if it is asbestos, contact a licensed professional. Luckily, our framer is a licensed professional. He removes all the asbestos for the city. So he's going to take care of the asbestos on this in addition to framing this roof. We had the asbestos professionally remediated, and then he jumped straight into framing. When we bought this house, it was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath. And what we have done is utilize this space that wasn't really functional before and put a master bathroom in it and attached it to the 3rd bedroom at the back of the house to create an ensuite. So when we took over the house, there was a bunch of non-usable space here. So we took care of the demo, we took off the roof, we remediated the asbestos siding, we took down the walls, framed them at a proper height. Now we have a usable space that we can count in our legal square footage. Low guy on the totem pole in a framing situation is the nailer guy. He goes around and puts all the nailers in. So what a nailer is the drywall guy needs something to obviously nail to, or in our case, screw to. You've got to have a piece of wood which doesn't really fit naturally back here, so you got to tuck it in behind and screw it to the previous stud. If you look at this one, you can see there's no nailer here, so there's nowhere for the drywall to attach to, and it'll just be floating there. So we'll put some 2x4s back here, and that'll give us a nice solid foundation for our drywall installation. I want to talk about another tip here on flipping a house. Think outside the box. So if you look above us, the wood is so distressed and falling apart that just simply overlaying the drywall becomes kind of a nightmare. So what we did in here is we dropped the ceiling to 8 feet. You can do that in a bathroom. There's plenty of head height to still feel like you have tall ceilings. And then we can drywall straight on that. If you're going to get into this business, you need to make friends with the inspector. The inspectors control it all. They can make or break your project. On this project, what we did, being such an old house, they like to work with us. So I brought an inspector out and asked him how he wanted me to handle these windows. They're not framed in a modern fashion. So he was cool with just leaving the bracing the way it is because there's no real load on the window. Since this whole house has a 4x4 sitting as a top plate, there's not much load to transfer down to that window. So make friends with your inspectors. So I can't say it enough. Your inspectors are your friends. Don't fight them, don't push them, and they'll make your life easier. In this house, there's a lot of things that aren't even close to modern building code. And you know, because we have a good relationship with our inspectors and they know we try to do everything the best we possibly can, we don't try to hide stuff. We went around and used fire foam to protect all of our air gaps so we don't get fire transfer from floor to floor. Well, when the inspector came in, he told us, you know, he was so impressed that we had taken that step in this particular project because it's just not something most guys do. So we always try to do everything the best we possibly can. So due to situations with lumber prices, which a lot of people are aware of, if you're following me on social media, I'm sure you've seen my post about the cost raises that have happened with lumber. I know a contractor in New Jersey that's now paying $102 a sheet for plywood. Our initial plan in this house was to use an LVP product, which is a luxury vinyl plank, which is real thin, but these floors are so unlevel that we would have to put 3/4 inch subfloor, which is plywood, on top of this existing subfloor to level it out enough to make that LVP sit right. Well, when we do the cost analysis of what it's going to cost for subfloor, for glue, for labor, we can actually go down with 3/4 inch hardwood oak floor and finish it for about 20% more. So that's what we're going to do in this job. We're going to talk a little bit about insulation in this house. In a lot of houses, even up into the 70s, you're not going to find insulation when you open up the walls. It was a luxury, I guess. They didn't really make you do it. So what we did opening these walls is we put in insulation. This is going to help drastically with noise and heating and cooling. If you look above me, you're going to see what's called a baffle. This baffle allows air to come in through the soffit and into the roof. Otherwise, you would get a ceiling that doesn't vent properly. It would sweat. It'd cause you all kinds of problems. On this side, you're going to see a giant ruler. What this ruler does is it tells my guys that spray the insulation in how much insulation to put in, because at certain heights, it becomes a certain R value. As you can see, a little paint goes a long ways. This isn't even paint, it's just primer, but you know what it was and what it is, paint's a powerful tool. We talked a little bit about the floors last time and going with vinyl versus hardwood and the expense. What we did was go with what is called a character grade oak floor. You can see the variation in this. There's knot holes, there's different colors. This is representative of old wood. So being that this house was built in the 20s, we wanted to stick with that theme. So it's got a lot more character in it than you're gonna see in a lot of modern construction. Something else to note, this house is not heated and cooled yet, so there's humidity fluctuation, which is not good for oak floor. But this particular floor is sealed on all 4 sides, so that will help with that shrinkage and expansion until we can get this heated and cooled properly.